Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to see another chapter in Caro-Kann formation structure. And this is the fifth video, especially in this Caro-Kann structure. And we will see here when black will achieve the C6, C5 break very easily, how black can build up more pressure and win the game. And that was a decisive mistake actually for white to allow that C5, C6, C5 break very easily. So I took this game from a database. Basically, white was Phillips, Closer, and black was Wigman, very very popular name. And after the opening, this opening didn't came from directly Caravans, but it came from English opening C4 C6 kind of setup. But later on, we'll see that the how it will transpose into kind of Caravan setup. So here, white has played e4. Black's last move was rook to c8, and white played e4. White achieved this center break. But let's see how black continue with the game. Knight into e4, knight into e4, d into e4, queen into e4. And we have reached the key structure. But black's opening play has been very solid. And he is ready to dispute white's control to the center. Knight f6, queen h4. And now c5. Okay. It seems that after taking here, bishop f6 is coming. Black is going to damage the pawn structure. But it really doesn't matter. So white played rook a d1, but let's see that what will happen if white will play d into c5. We can play bishop into c5. It's completely possible because after this, sorry, queen f6, queen f6, g f6, black is having very powerful two double bishops in the game, and it compensates for this broken pawn structure. And definitely, I would not say that black is very poor in this position, and especially after. But there is another move, rook into c5, rook a d1, and then knight e4. Actually, black manages to fully equalize in this position. Black's pieces are very very active. We are ready to trade off the queen, and then we'll play bishop e7. So black doesn't have any problem. So rook a d1, knight e4, queen into d8, and then after that rook into d8. Here we can see an alternative that what will happen if queen h5 played, but then simply c d4, bishop d4, queen to e7, just stepping away from this vulnerable d file. And in this position, white can play bishop d3 and f5. So when black is very very comfortable, and actually this position actually came in a game between Fabiano Caruana and Jan Gustafsson in 2009. And in the game, original game, it continued with queen d5, queen into d8, rook f into d8, and it is now white who faces the problem due to the central pressure. Knight to d2, and this d4 square is coming under pressure. Knight to d2, white is looking for simplifying the position, but this is an inaccuracy in this situation, and which only increases white's difficulty. So instead of that, d into c5 was a possible move, but it also doesn't solve the problem. Bishop into c5, knight to e5, and black has many promising moves. Even knight f2 is definitely an interesting alternative to see. Rook into f2, rook d1, bishop d1, and rook d8, bishop a2, bishop into f2, king into f2, rook, and then bishop into g2. So again, you cannot take king into g2, and rook d2 is coming. So I will take one of the bishop, and then this pawn will fall. And definitely in this position, black is having too many pawns. White has two pieces, but in the endgame, when the rook is very active, so those minor pieces cannot carry that much value. And this pawn will, once it will start pushing on the king side and the center, white cannot defend those things. So knight to d2, knight into d2, rook into d2, bishop to e5. And this is a very nice move that which actually brings more pressure on the d4 square, and white is having the main weakness, which is the d4 pawn. Rook f d1, bishop f4, okay, targeting that rook. So rook to c2, and the rook has to go to a very, I would say that not so called good position for the white rook. Black played bishop to e4, and bishop d3, bishop into d3, rook into d3, rook d7, ready to play rook f d8 and put more pressure on the square. Here white has played g3. So but let's see that what will happen if white will play rook to e2 and try to keep more pressure here. Rook c d8, g3, bishop g5, d5, ed5, ed5, king f8, and definitely black is having very good winning chances due to that weak d5 pawn. Yes, you can play f4, but again, I'm not sure that are you able to keep this pawn alive or not, because after bishop to h6 or e7, whatever you would play, h6 or e7, both are fine. So either h6 or e7, both are fine. And then t5 pawn is really really weak, and black definitely holds good attack or good pressure on that d5 square. So g3 played in the game, bishop to e5, d5, bishop into b2, rook into b2, cd, ed, and king f8. Again, we have reached an interesting rook endgame, which is somewhat typical of this pawn structure when black released the position with c5, and black is having the majority actually. If you see later on, therefore, we'll see some of the analysis from here. Rook b2, rook e8, king g2, king e7, black king is ready to go to the d6 square, or even from d8 here it will go and put pressure. So rook to e3 check, king to d8. Again here the probably the base practical chance was d6 with the idea of king d8, rook d5, rook e6. Definitely the d6 pawn is a weakness, but black cannot immediately take this pawn here. But yes, black do have some ideas, but a3, a5, and you will come and later on we'll put this pawn. But yes, definitely white can open up the c file and create some sort of counterplay. But yes, but at least white can fight for this position. So rook e3 check, king d8, king f3, rook d e7, h4. Okay. If you are transferring to a kind of pawn endgame with you're thinking, okay, I'll be holding this, but then this pawn endgame is losing for white actually. That we'll see king d3, king d6, king c4, a6, and ready to play b5, a4, and h5, and white is the one who is falling into zugzwang. f4, g6, h3, f6, g4, h4, and f5, g5. So white is the one who is actually losing moves or losing tempo, and once the white will move his king, then basically the a5 pawn will fall. So h4 played in this position, king d7, sorry, king d7, king f4, king d6. That's what I was thinking. Black's play has been very precise in the last few moves. g4, b5, g5, rook e5, h5. White is pushing the pawn towards the black's king, but it will not help him for that moment. We will, without going into too much deep, we will let's see that how the further game has been went off. So rook f5 check, king g4, rook e5, and we can easily see that the d5 pawn is falling apart. Rook into e5, rook into e5, f4, rook d5, rook c2, rook d3, and once black has won the pawn, rest of the thing is quite technical and quite easy. Rook e2, c4, and black now pushes his extra pawn. bc, bc, rook e8, rook d5, threatening to play c4, c2, and rook c5. Game is already over kind of. King f3, c3, rook d8 check, king to c5, rook c8 check, king to d4, rook c7, king d3, rook into f7, c2, rook c7, king d2, king e4, and rook d8. c1 is queening. There is no way you can stop this position. Even you can play f5, but doesn't matter. We'll simply take and then play. After the queening, we can simply play whatever we'll play. Even after just coming here and we'll take the a2 pawn. Just imagine after f5, we can take, queen, take, g6. You might think the position is winning, but actually not. that here actually we can play take, and then simply a5, a4, a3, and king will come. We were happy to give up this rook, and this pawn will become a new queen, and the game is completely winning. So what we have learned from this game, that when black has played c6, c5 very easily, right? White has not prevented that. So black actually equalized the game in an easy way, and white knight d2 poses more problem for him, even exchange the queen. So endgame was definitely preferable for black, and this is how the game has ended. So I hope you like this video. If you have liked it, please share it with your friends, and if you are new in my channel, kindly subscribe. And please comment it down below what kind of video you want to see. See you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.